Welcome back, everyone, to Storytime with Zell. I am XelionGraves, and tonight I'm going to read to you one of my older stories. A full-length one, in fact, entitled Eternal Care Forest. Mind you, some of the characters in this story are rather foul-mouthed, unlike myself. This is a work of fiction. All characters are copyright and trademarked to Anani Artist and XelionGraves. Any similarities to other people or events, living or dead, real or imagined, is unintentional. Prologue. Don't go into the woods. That's what the old man said. He said, "You're perfectly fine going to Eternal Care Asylum. Just don't go into the woods around it." Did they listen? Yes and no. Running in with guns drawn to fill the bag? That was planned. Killing who they thought was a cop that snuck up behind William? That part wasn't. Neither was driving full speed on an icy road and crashing into that rail. Now James and Will had to go through the woods. Can't risk it on the road, they'd be caught easy. No. It would have been easier to just cut through the middle of the woods. No one goes there. It's all surrounded by stupid superstitions and myth. It should have been easier. Chapter 1. Crash. "Please, we don't have a vault. We're just a free care clinic," begged Lois, the receptionist. William, a man with short, curly auburn hair and a dark red suit jacket, with a blue t-shirt underneath, and blue jeans with white sneakers. He didn't care. His hand held steady the revolver aimed at her face, as he yelled, "Shut up, bitch. You think I'm blind? You get more donations than anywhere in the city. Now fill the bag," from behind his clear plastic mask obscuring his face. Lois was terrified as she nodded slowly and started pouring the coins and cash from several of the donation jars from under the counter into the black duffel bag. James, also wearing the same kind of mask, with slick-back black hair, wearing a dark brown trench coat duster, with a black undershirt and black cargo pants, with black military boots, standing only a few inches taller than Will, kept his shotgun trained on the hostages, most of which were just children, barely old enough to walk. He shouted over his shoulder, "Willie, let's go!" And William turned just in time to see the black outfit and a flash of silver. Could have been a badge. And he wasn't about to just give up and go to jail. Not when they were this close. Will moved his hand first, bashing the gun against the guard's face and shooting him twice before he fell, once in the chest and the second in his neck. Only after did Will realize that the cop he shot was just a nurse in black scrubs, and the badge was just the metal of a stethoscope. James turned to look at Will, yelling at him, "What the fuck, Will?" while looking at the freshly bleeding and still twitching corpse on the ground. Will stammered for a few seconds before James snapped, "Get the bag and get to the damn car." Will nodded quickly, his hand shaking while holding his revolver, barely able to hold it now that he burnt his hand from holding the gun wrong when he fired. Grabbing the bag with his free hand, zipping it up and running with it slung over his shoulder. Lois having ducked under the counter to hide in fear. James wasn't far behind, keeping his shotgun aimed at the people on the ground as he backed up quickly toward the doors, saying just before he left, "Wasn't supposed to be like this." They ran to their car, An old beat-up rust bucket of a sedan that may have once been turquoise, about 20 years back. James getting in the driver's seat, and William getting in the side, holding the money bag in his lap. Tossing their masks in the back seat, and soon they were off to the bridge. The car barely started when James started shouting, "What the hell were you thinking? You killed him!" With William panicked as he says, I don't know. I thought he was a cop or something. He just was there, and then he... James interrupting sharply with, "And then you shot him. We only brought the guns to scare him. That's all, damn it. Now we got murder to go along with armed robbery, you stupid..." Interrupting himself to reach over and smack William's shoulder and back repeatedly. "Fucking moron!" William flinching to the punches, then suddenly pointing straight ahead and screaming, "James!" It was a patch of ice, entirely invisible if not for the shimmer from the headlights, just at the start of the bridge. It would have been fine if they were driving at safe speeds for icy roads, considering how cold it was. It would have been fine if they weren't driving at 60 miles per hour, and already swerving from James's outburst. It was hard to tell if they started screaming when they lost control of the car and it started hydroplaning, or after they hit the railing and the car went down, over the edge of the bridge, tumbling down the cliff to the forest below. Chapter 2. Cabin. It took a few minutes before James realized blood was in his eyes. Leaning back from the bent steering wheel and groaning as he wipes his face with his hands and says, "Christ on a crackerjack! You okay, Will?" Looking over to an empty passenger seat, then snapping his focus to the big hole in the windshield. "William!" James rushed unclipping his seatbelt, yanking on it and cursing before finally getting it off and falling out the door onto his back, and grunting before scrambling to his feet and calling out, "William, you better be alive or I'm gonna kill you." He was about to call out again before he heard a reply. "James!" coming from deeper in the woods. It was Will. He was still alive. James started to run, only to find searing pain running through his foot, probably broken, but it wasn't going to stop James from helping his friend. Letting out pained groans every few steps as he limped into the forest as quick as he could. It wasn't long before James found poor William, laying on the ground next to a tree and clutching the duffel bag as tight as he could. James shook his head as he knelt down beside Will, saying, "Money's better than your own safety? Fucking moron. Can you move?" Will shook his head. "If I didn't grab the damn bag, we wouldn't have shit, James. And no, I can't move. It's my leg. I still can't feel it or move it or nothing." James said, "Fuck," under his breath before saying, all right, quit panicking. Wrap your arm around my shoulders and hold tight. I'll get us somewhere safe." William nods slowly and points towards a cabin a few yards away. "Over there. Gotta be some first aid, right?" James looks over and nods. "Good thinking, for once. Let's go." Sharing William's weight, they slowly saunter through the woods toward the cabin, lit up from the dark by the moonlight, though that did make it seem even more strange, seeing it was a new moon night. James didn't seem to notice that, though, instead narrowing his brow as he says, "Who the hell would have a cabin way the fuck out here?" With William laughing a bit before coughing blood into his hand, then saying sarcastically, "People in horror movies?" And James snaps back with, "If my foot wasn't broken, I'd kick your ass." There was a light coming from inside the cabin, which put James on edge. Pushing the door open and dragging themselves in, there were a few large beanbags in the room, some white fuzzy throw rugs, a small round table with chairs around it in the center, and a couch on one side of the room. The light was coming from the fireplace. At least it was warm, but it also meant for certain that someone else was here. James laid William down on the couch, facing the fireplace, and set the bag down beside the couch. William called out, "Somebody here? We need help." James, rolling his eyes at Will, then starts limping around the rooms, trying to find a first aid kit while also looking for a weapon to use on anyone that came around. They were wanted criminals now, after all. Grabbing a butcher knife from a countertop in the kitchen, and finding the first aid in the bathroom. He looked around a bit more, but it was a fairly small cabin, and no one else seemed to be there. Frowning as he gets back to the living room and sets the knife and first aid next to Will, and gets out all the usuals: tape, disinfectant, gauze, and a splint. Will saying, "Well, you don't have to look so damn sad about it. And do you even know what you're doing?" With James saying, "I'm not sad, asshole, I'm worried. Someone had to have lit that fire. They're not here, so they're probably on their way back right now. What are they going to do when they find 2 wanted men in their home?" Will started to snap back, then slowly nodded, and James adds, "And yeah, of course I know what I'm doing. I played MGS3, it's all in there." Will has his turn to roll his eyes at James, but lets him work, wincing at the pain and letting out a yelp when James sets his leg with a splint. James scoffing and saying, "Quit your crying, you baby." After he gets done with Will's leg, James gets to work on his own foot, and then picks the knife back up and leans back on the couch. Outside, the rain began to fall, and as cold as it was, they'd freeze to death if they tried to make a go of it in their condition. James looked over it to William and said, "Guess we're sticking around here then. Best get comfortable." Will simply nodded while glaring at James. After a few seconds, James snaps with, "What?" And Will says, "This never would have happened if you weren't driving so fucking fast." James growls and points to Will as he says, "Don't you dare pin this on me. It's your damn fault for being a dumbass. If you didn't shoot the guy, then we wouldn't be on the run like this." Will was about to make another comeback, but the sudden banging and scratching at the door nearly made them both leap out of their skin. Both of them staring at the door as the loud clawing, banging, and strange guttural growling continues for about a minute, then stops, just as suddenly as it happened. James and Will both were breathing heavy from the fright, and after a few moments, Will whispered, "The fuck was that?" James looked over to Will, shaking his head and saying, "Probably just some animal." Then getting up slowly, clutching his knife tight as he limps over to the door, pressing his ear to it to listen outside. Not a sound, but the wind and rain. James looks back to Will and slowly shrugs his shoulders, then slowly backs away from the door and limps his way to the couch again. Will saying, "It sounded pretty damn big for a wild animal." James looked to the door, then back to Will as he says, "It could have been a bear," with Will adding, "making those noises." And James looks back to the door again, saying slowly, "I've never heard anything make those sounds before." William shivered for a moment, then said, "Well, lock the door before something gets in here." James scoffs and says, "Wild animals can't open doors, dumbass." And Will snaps back, "Shut up! Just lock it." James puts his hands up and says simply, "Fine," and gets up, groaning at the pain in his foot as he limps over and locks the door, just in time for something on the other side to bash against it and knock James onto his back. making him cry out when his heel hits the floor as Will says, "What the fuck, it's back!" James grinds his teeth as he fumbles with the knife a few times before grasping it tight and pointing it at the locked door. The bashing more forceful than last time, and the clawing sounding like it was tearing off pieces of wood with every swipe. William grabbed the seat cushion and held it in front of his face like a shield as he peeked over the top of it at the door. James muttered under his breath, "Come on, you son of a bitch. Just try it." The door shaking and becoming more and more brittle with each strike, and the bizarre growling getting louder, sounding like the mix of a bear, wolf, and even a human voice. Then a new sound came through, the sound of something heavy being swung through the air, and what sounds like thick meat being cut through quickly, followed by a soft, metallic hum for a few seconds as whatever it was attacking the door stops. James was just about to stand up again when something heavy presses against the door, as if something on the other side slumped against it. James looks over to William as if searching for an answer, to which Will simply shakes his head and shrugs. The two knocks at the door snapped both of their focus on the door. James and Will both remaining silent for a few seconds before the door knocks again, and a voice from outside says, "Knock, knock." James tilts his head a bit, and Will says shakily, "Who's there?" Then they both turn pale as their blood runs cold from the simple response, death. Thank you for listening. This has been Storytime with Zell. I'm going to do this as a full series, 2 chapters at a time. Thank you all for watching and for listening. Relax, sit back, and I'll catch you next time. Later.